The silence was wrong. Admiral Hayes had heard space battles before, and they were never quiet. Even across the vast emptiness between stars, the radio waves carried screams, orders, the sharp crack of weapons firing. But from the Centauri system came nothing at all. 3 days ago, the colony had sent their usual morning report. 15 million people going about their lives on New Geneva, the farming communities on Haven, the mining operations on Rockport. Normal, peaceful, boring. Then the Dominion ships arrived and everything changed. Hayes stared at the tactical display in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface. Red dots marked 12 star systems that had gone dark in the past 6 months. 12 civilizations that had simply stopped talking to the rest of the galaxy. The pattern was always the same. First came the Dominion fleet, black ships that looked like they were carved from obsidian. Then came the reports of something impossible, something that made veteran soldiers abandon their posts and run. Finally came silence. "Sir, we have a survivor ship coming through the jump gate," Lieutenant Grant said from her station. Her voice was steady, but Hayes could see her hands shaking as she worked the controls. "Put them on screen." The view screen flickered to life, showing a small transport ship. Its hull was scorched and twisted, parts of it still glowing red from heat damage. Through the cockpit window, Hayes could see the pilot slumped over the controls, barely conscious. "This is Transport Vessel Morningstar requesting emergency docking," came a weak voice through the speakers. "We're the only ones who made it out. The only ones left." Hayes felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Grant, clear them for emergency landing. Get medical teams standing by." 2 hours later, Hayes sat across from Captain Chen in the medical bay. The woman's left arm was in a cast and bandages covered half her face, but her eyes were alert and angry. "Tell me what happened," Hayes said quietly. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Hell, I was there and I don't believe it. Try me." Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "They called it the Ravager. 30 meters tall, maybe more. Looked like someone took a dinosaur and mixed it with a nightmare. Scales like armor plating, teeth the size of swords, claws that could slice through a battleship." Hayes had read the reports from other systems, but hearing it from someone who had been there was different. "What about weapons? Did anything work against it?" "Nothing." Chen's voice was flat. "The defense fleet hit it with everything. Plasma cannons, fusion missiles, kinetic rounds. The weapons just bounced off its hide like raindrops. When it breathed, this green mist came out that ate through hull metal like acid. Ships that got too close just dissolved." "How did you escape?" "I didn't fight it. Soon as I saw what it was doing to the fleet, I grabbed every civilian I could fit in my transport and ran for the jump gate. Even then, I barely made it. That thing was fast for something so big." Chen looked up at Hayes. "Admiral, it's not just a weapon. It's smart. It was playing with the defense fleet, letting some ships think they could hurt it before crushing them. It enjoyed it." Hayes had heard similar stories from the other survivor ships that had made it to Earth. The details varied, but the core facts were always the same. The Dominion had created something unstoppable, and they were using it to carve their way through the galaxy one system at a time. "Where is it now?" Hayes asked. "Last I saw, it was heading for the civilian shelters on New Geneva. 3 million people in underground bunkers thinking concrete and steel would protect them." Chen's voice broke. It dug them out like a dog digging up bones. Hayes left the medical bay with his head spinning. In his 40 years of military service, he had never faced anything like this. The Dominion had always been a threat, but they had fought like any other empire. Ships against ships, soldiers against soldiers. This was something else entirely. The emergency council meeting was already underway when Hayes arrived. Representatives from 50 worlds filled the chamber, their holographic forms flickering as the quantum communicators struggled with the distance. The mood was grim. Elder Moss, the Aquarian representative, was speaking when Hayes entered. "Our sonic weapons had no effect. We can shatter mountains with our sound pulses, but they passed through the creature like it wasn't there. The Christek energy barriers were useless," added Ambassador Stone from the mineral worlds. "It walked through our strongest shields like they were made of paper. Our people couldn't even slow it down." General Kane from the Thornback Systems was next. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their strength and courage in battle. They had never met an enemy they couldn't face with honor. "My warriors are bred for war. We have fought for 10,000 years and never retreated from any foe. But this thing, Kane's translator struggled with the emotions in his voice. It killed my best soldiers without even noticing them. They were insects to it. Hayes took his place at the table and activated his communicator. The human fleet stands ready to help in any way we can. What do we know about the creature's weaknesses? The chamber fell silent. Finally, Elder Moss spoke again. That is the problem, Admiral. We have found no weaknesses. Every species, every weapon, every strategy has failed. The creature appears to be invulnerable. Nothing is invulnerable, Hayes said firmly. Everything has a weakness. We just haven't found it yet. Perhaps, said Ambassador Stone. But how many more worlds will fall while we search? The Dominion is moving toward the core systems. If they reach the trade routes, galactic civilization could collapse. Hayes pulled up the tactical display. The red dots marking fallen systems formed a rough line pointing directly toward Earth and the other major worlds. At their current rate of expansion, the Dominion would reach human space within 6 months. We need more information, Hayes said. I'm authorizing deep reconnaissance missions. We need to study this creature, learn how it fights, how it thinks. You're sending ships to their death, General Kane said bluntly. Maybe. But if we don't try, we're all dead anyway. The meeting continued for hours, but Hayes already knew what he had to do. Earth's fleet was smaller than the other major powers, but humans had one advantage that might matter. They were stubborn. When other species retreated, humans had a habit of staying and fighting even when the odds were hopeless. As the representatives signed off one by one, Hayes remained in the chamber, staring at the display. Somewhere out there, a monster was destroying everything in its path, and the greatest military minds in the galaxy had no answer for it. But Hayes had learned something important from listening to the survivors. The creature wasn't just powerful, it was confident. It had never faced real resistance, never had to adapt or change tactics. That confidence might be the weakness they were looking for. Hayes activated his personal communicator. Grant, prepare the fleet for deep space reconnaissance, and put out a call for volunteers. We're going monster hunting. Snow crunched under Sam Walsh's boots as he followed the tracks up the mountain trail. Rex, his German shepherd, trotted beside him with his nose to the ground, ears alert for any sound. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine trees and the distant promise of more snow. This was supposed to be a routine check of the wildlife preserve boundaries. But the tracks told a different story. A grizzly bear had wandered down from the high country, probably looking for food before winter set in properly. Sam had been tracking it for 2 hours not to harm it, but to make sure it wasn't heading toward the small town at the base of the mountain. Rex stopped suddenly, his head tilted toward something Sam couldn't hear. Then Sam's radio crackled to life. "Sam, you need to get back to headquarters right now," came the voice of his supervisor, Maria Santos. "There's been an emergency broadcast from the government. They're asking for volunteers." "What kind of volunteers?" Sam asked, still watching Rex, who was now looking up at the sky. "Military support operations. Something about evacuating refugee ships. Sam, they're talking about alien attacks. Real ones." Sam looked up and saw what Rex had heard first. High overhead, contrails marked the passage of military spacecraft heading toward the orbital stations. More ships than he had ever seen before, all moving with the urgency of a crisis. "I'll be right down," Sam said into his radio. The drive back to the ranger station took 20 minutes on the winding mountain roads. Rex sat in the passenger seat with his head out the window watching the sky. More ships passed overhead, their ion drives leaving brilliant streaks across the blue afternoon. At headquarters, Sam found chaos. Rangers, Forest Service workers, and local volunteers crowded around the main communication screen, watching news feeds from around the galaxy. The images were horrific: burning cities, destroyed fleets, and scattered reports of something called the Ravager that could not be stopped. "They're asking for anyone with relevant skills," Maria said when Sam found her. "Search and rescue, tracking, animal handling. The refugee ships are going to need guides and security personnel." Sam watched the screen as a reporter described the fall of the Centauri colonies. 15 million people dead or missing. An entire star system gone silent. The numbers were too big to understand, but Sam understood fear when he saw it in the faces around him. "I'll volunteer," he said quietly. Maria looked surprised. "Sam, this isn't a hiking emergency or a lost tourist. These are military operations in space. People are scared and running from something they don't understand. That's something I can help with." Sam looked down at Rex, who was sitting calmly despite the tension in the room. Besides, they asked for animal handlers. Rex has military experience. That was true, though Sam didn't like to talk about it much. Rex had served 3 tours in the border wars before an explosion damaged his hearing and ended his military career. The dog had been scheduled for retirement when Sam adopted him 5 years ago. Now Rex helped with search and rescue operations in the mountains, his training adapted for finding lost hikers instead of hidden enemies. The application process was surprisingly simple. Sam filled out forms on a tablet computer while Rex lay at his feet, ignoring the noise and activity around them. Military experience, some through Rex's service record, specialized skills, tracking, animal behavior, wilderness survival, search and rescue operations. 2 days later, Sam found himself on a transport ship heading for Earth's orbital defense platform. Rex traveled in a special compartment for working animals, calm and professional despite the new environment. The other volunteers were mostly former military personnel, security contractors, and emergency responders. Sam felt out of place in his ranger uniform among all the combat gear and tactical equipment. The orbital platform was bigger than anything Sam had ever seen, shaped like a massive wheel. It rotated slowly to provide artificial gravity. Ships came and went constantly, bringing supplies and taking away evacuees from the war zones. Sam's assignment was simple: help process refugee ships and provide security for the temporary housing areas. His first day on the platform, Sam witnessed something that changed his perspective on the whole conflict. A refugee ship from the Thornback systems docked at the main port, and Sam watched as the passengers disembarked. These were members of one of the galaxy's most fearsome warrior species, beings who stood 3 meters tall and could crush steel with their bare hands. But they moved like broken things, their eyes empty of the fierce pride their species was known for. Sam helped direct families to temporary quarters, while Rex provided a calming presence. Children from a dozen different species seemed to respond to the dog's patient demeanor, and parents found it easier to cooperate when they saw that even the human's animal companion was relaxed and friendly. It was during his 3rd week on the platform that Sam met Admiral Hayes. The military leader was touring the refugee processing centers when he stopped to watch Sam working with a group of frightened Aquarian children. Rex was demonstrating simple tricks while Sam explained through a translator that the platform was safe, that no monsters could reach them here. "You're the ranger from Colorado," Hayes said when Sam approached him later. "Yes, sir. Sam Walsh, this is Rex." Hayes knelt down and let Rex sniff his hand before scratching behind the dog's ears. "I read your file. Your partner here has an impressive service record. He's retired from all that now," Sam said. "We just help people in the mountains. Tell me something, Ranger. You've been working with the refugees for weeks now. What do you think about this creature everyone's afraid of?" Sam considered the question carefully. He had listened to hundreds of survivor stories by now, and certain patterns had started to emerge. "I think it's an animal, sir. A very large, very dangerous animal, but still an animal. And all animals have predictable behaviors if you know how to read them." Hayes looked interested. "Go on." "Every report describes the same attack pattern. The creature goes for the biggest, most obvious targets first. It seems to enjoy the fear it causes. It's territorial and aggressive, but it's also consistent. That suggests intelligence, but also suggests it's never had to adapt its hunting strategies." "You're saying it might be possible to predict its actions?" "Maybe. In my experience, the most dangerous animals are often the most set in their ways. They're dangerous because their current methods work, so they never learn new ones." Sam paused. "Of course, I've never dealt with anything 30 meters tall before." Hayes was quiet for a moment, watching Rex interact with a group of refugee children from 3 different species. "Ranger Walsh, how would you feel about getting a closer look at this creature?" "Sir, I'm putting together a reconnaissance mission. We need people who can observe and analyze behavior patterns, not just military tactics. Your perspective might be exactly what we need." Sam looked down at Rex, who was calmly allowing an Aquarian child to pet his fur while her parents watched nervously. The dog showed no stress, no fear, just professional patience with a scared youngster who needed comfort. "When do we leave?" Sam asked. Hayes smiled for the first time since Sam had met him. "Tomorrow. Pack light and bring your partner. Something tells me we're going to need his expertise." That evening, Sam sat in his small quarters on the platform, cleaning Rex's gear and thinking about what he had volunteered for. Through the viewport, he could see Earth turning slowly below, blue and green and beautiful. Somewhere out there in the darkness between stars, a monster was destroying entire worlds. But Sam had spent his career dealing with dangerous animals, and he had learned something that the military strategists seemed to have missed. The most effective way to handle a dangerous animal wasn't always to fight it. Sometimes you just had to understand it. Rex lay beside him, relaxed and ready for whatever came next. The dog had faced combat before and come through it. Now they would face something new together, armed with patience, observation skills, and the simple knowledge that every creature, no matter how fearsome, was still just an animal trying to survive in its own way. Sam finished cleaning Rex's tactical harness and checked their supply kit one more time. Tomorrow they would begin the journey toward the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. He wasn't scared exactly, but he was very, very focused. The holographic display showed death in perfect detail. Sam sat in the briefing room aboard the scout ship Thunder Bay, watching footage from the Kepler-7 mining colony's final hours. Rex lay at his feet, ears relaxed but eyes alert, reading the tension in the room with the skill of a trained military animal. Captain Rivers paused the playback as the Ravager appeared on screen. Even through the grainy security footage, the creature was terrifying. 30 meters of muscle and scales moving with predatory grace despite its massive size. Its head was elongated like a crocodile's, but the eyes showed intelligence that no Earth reptile possessed. "This is from the main mining facility," Rivers said. The creature appeared at dawn and began its attack immediately. "Notice how it approaches." Sam leaned forward, studying the footage carefully. The other crew members saw a monster destroying their defenses, but Sam saw something else. The creature's approach was methodical, almost ritualistic. It came from the east, moving in a straight line toward the largest building complex. "Can you replay that section?" Sam asked. Rivers nodded and reset the footage. Sam watched the creature's initial approach 3 more times, taking notes on a tablet computer. Rex shifted beside him, sensing his owner's intense concentration. "What do you see, Ranger?" asked Lieutenant Morgan, the ship's tactical officer. Her tone suggested she thought this was a waste of time. "It's not hunting randomly," Sam said slowly. "Look at the path it takes. There are smaller buildings, easier targets all around, but it goes straight for the main complex. That's not normal predator behavior. Maybe it can sense where the most people are," Rivers suggested. "Maybe. But watch what happens next." The footage continued. The Ravager reached the main building and began tearing through the defensive barriers. But instead of rushing inside once it broke through, the creature paused. For almost 30 seconds it stood motionless, as if waiting for something. "It's giving them time to panic," Sam said. "Look at the body language. Head raised, chest expanded. It's displaying dominance, making sure its prey knows it's beaten before the real attack begins." Dr. Webb, the ship's xenobiologist, looked skeptical. "You're attributing very complex psychological behavior to what might just be an engineered killing machine." Sam shook his head. "Everything displays dominance when it hunts. Bears stand up to look bigger. Wolves circle their prey to create fear before attacking. Big cats make themselves visible when they could stay hidden. This creature is following the same patterns, just on a larger scale." The footage continued, showing the creature's systematic destruction of the mining facility. But Sam noticed something the others had missed. Between attacks, the Ravager would pause and look around as if searching for something. "There," Sam pointed at the screen. "It's listening. Or trying to. Watch its head movements." Rivers enhanced the audio feed, but there was only the sound of collapsing buildings and distant screams. The creature's head continued to turn, tracking sounds that the recording equipment couldn't pick up. "Its hearing might not be as good as it looks," Sam said thoughtfully. "That's common in very large predators. They trade auditory sensitivity for size and strength. So it's partially deaf?" Morgan asked. "Not deaf, but possibly limited. And look at this." Sam pointed to another section of footage. "It only responds to visual movement. When people stay perfectly still, it seems to lose track of them for several seconds." Dr. Webb was taking notes now, her skepticism replaced by professional interest. That would make sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Creatures this large often develop tunnel vision as a trade-off for enhanced strength. The briefing continued for 2 hours, with Sam analyzing every piece of footage from the Kepler-7 attack. Gradually, a picture emerged of the Ravager's behavior patterns. It was intelligent, but its intelligence was focused and limited. It approached conflicts the same way every time, suggesting it had never needed to adapt its strategies. It's overconfident, Sam concluded. It's won every encounter using the same basic approach, so it's never learned to vary its tactics. That might be our advantage. Advantage? Morgan laughed. Ranger, this thing destroyed a fleet of battleships. What advantage could we possibly have? Sam looked down at Rex, who was watching him with calm, intelligent eyes. Every animal has behavioral triggers, responses that are hardwired into its nervous system. If we can identify those triggers, we might be able to predict its actions. Captain Rivers closed the holographic display. We'll find out soon enough. We're approaching the Kepler-7 system now. 3 hours later, Sam stood on the Thunder Bay's observation deck, watching the mining world grow larger in the viewport. The planet looked normal from a distance, but long-range scans showed the devastation on the surface. Entire cities had been leveled, and massive claw marks scarred the landscape like wounds. There. Rex pointed with his nose toward the main view screen. I've got movement on the surface. Sam followed the dog's gaze. Rex's eyesight was sharper than any human's, and he had spotted something the ship's sensors hadn't detected yet. A moment later, the computer confirmed it. Large organism detected in the northern mining sector, reported Ensign Park from the sensor station. Length approximately 30 meters, moving at 15 kilometers per hour. That's our target, Rivers said. I'll stop. Maintain distance and begin detailed scans. For the next 6 hours, Sam observed the Ravager through the ship's high-powered telescopes. Rex sat beside him, occasionally indicating things that caught his attention. The creature was even more impressive in real time than in the security footage. Its movements were fluid and purposeful, like a hunting cat scaled up to impossible size. But Sam noticed things that the cameras had missed. The creature's posture changed depending on what it was doing. When investigating new areas, it moved cautiously, head low and tail extended for balance. When it detected movement, its stance became aggressive and dominant. And when it was alone with no prey to intimidate, its posture relaxed into something almost vulnerable. It's lonely, Sam said suddenly. Dr. Webb looked up from her notes. What did you say? Watch how it moves when it thinks it's unobserved. The head carriage, the way it settles down to rest. This creature was designed to be a weapon, but it has social instincts it can't fulfill. It's isolated and frustrated. Rivers joined them at the observation station. You're saying this monster has emotional needs? All intelligent creatures do. Social bonding is one of the most basic drives in nature. If this creature was engineered for combat, its creators probably tried to eliminate those instincts. But you can't completely remove millions of years of evolutionary programming. Sam continued watching the Ravager as it explored the ruins of the mining colony. Its movements were becoming more agitated, and it had begun making sounds that the ship's sensors could barely detect. It's calling, Sam realized. Those vocalizations aren't aggressive displays. They're contact calls. Contact with what? Morgan asked. With others of its kind, maybe. Or with anything that might respond. It's trying to communicate, but there's nothing there to answer. Rex suddenly stood up, his attention focused on the planet below. His ears were forward and his tail was still, the posture he used when tracking something important. Sam had learned to trust the dog's instincts completely. What is it, boy? Rex looked at Sam, then back at the planet. He made a soft whining sound, barely audible to human ears. He hears something we don't, Sam said to the others. Rex has partial hearing damage from his military service, but in certain frequency ranges, he's still better than any electronic sensor. Dr. Webb was checking her instruments frantically. I'm not detecting any audio signals from the surface. That's because you're listening for the wrong things, Sam said. Rex, show me. The dog moved to the viewport and placed his front paws on the observation rail. His head was tilted at a specific angle, and his breathing had changed to the pattern he used when concentrating on distant sounds. Sam studied Rex's posture and made some quick calculations. The creature is using infrasound, very low frequency calls below the range of most detection equipment. Elephant communication, Dr. Webb said with sudden understanding. Large animals often use infrasonic calls to communicate over long distances. Rivers activated the ship's specialized audio sensors, adjusting them to detect frequencies below the normal range. Immediately, the speakers filled with a deep resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through the hull itself. It was unmistakably a call of distress. The Ravager wasn't hunting or destroying anything. It was singing a song of loneliness that echoed across the empty planet. Sam looked at Rex, who was still focused on the sounds from below. The dog's tail had started wagging slowly, a sign that he was interpreting the calls as communication rather than threat. "Captain," Sam said quietly, "I'd like to go down to the surface." Rivers stared at him. "Ranger, that thing has killed millions of people. It's killed millions of people because no one has tried to understand it. Look at the evidence. It's intelligent, it's lonely, and it's trying to communicate. Maybe it's time someone tried talking back." Rex looked up at Sam and barked once, a clear sound of agreement. The dog was ready for whatever came next, trusting his human partner to make the right decision. Sam made his choice. "Captain, prepare a shuttle. Rex and I are going hunting, but not the kind you might expect." Red dust swirled around the shuttle as it touched down on the surface of Kepler 7. Through the small viewport, Sam could see the devastation that the Ravager had left behind. Twisted metal beams jutted from collapsed buildings like broken bones, and deep gouges in the ground showed where massive claws had scraped across stone and concrete. Rex pressed his nose to the window, his ears forward and alert. The dog showed no signs of fear, just professional interest in the new environment. Sam checked his equipment one final time. Water, basic first aid supplies, and the communication device that would let him stay in contact with the Thunder Bay. No weapons, no protective gear beyond a standard environment suit. "Ranger Walsh, this is completely insane," Captain Rivers said through the comm system. "That creature is 15 kilometers from your landing site and moving in your direction." "I know, Captain. That's why we're here." Sam opened the shuttle door and stepped out onto the alien soil. Rex jumped down beside him, immediately beginning to investigate the new scents and sounds. The air was breathable but thin, and Sam could feel the slightly lower gravity in his steps. In the distance, a low rumble echoed across the landscape. The Ravager was calling again, its infrasonic voice carrying easily across the empty planet. Sam started walking toward the sound, Rex trotting beside him with his nose to the ground. The dog was reading the story written in scents that Sam couldn't detect. Where the creature had been, what it had been doing, how long ago it had passed through each area. "Thunder Bay. I'm reading elevated stress indicators in the creature's vocalizations," came Dr. Webb's voice through the radio. "It may have detected your presence." "Good," Sam replied. "I want it to know we're here." The walk took 2 hours across the broken landscape. Sam used the time to observe and think, while Rex mapped the terrain with his enhanced senses. The destruction around them was impressive but not random. The Ravager had targeted specific buildings and structures, leaving others completely untouched. There was a pattern to the devastation that suggested intelligence and purpose, rather than mindless rage. They created a ridgeline and saw their destination spread out below. The Ravager stood in what had once been the central plaza of the mining colony's main settlement. Up close, it was even larger than the footage had suggested. Its scales caught the afternoon sunlight like polished metal, and when it moved, Sam could feel the vibrations through the ground. The creature was investigating something in the ruins, using its massive claws to carefully move debris. Its movements were precise and delicate despite its size, like a surgeon performing an operation. "It's searching for survivors," Sam realized, speaking into his radio. "Look at how carefully it's moving that rubble. It's not destroying anything unnecessarily." "Survivors?" Rivers sounded confused. "Ranger, that thing killed everyone in the colony. Maybe not killed. Maybe collected." Sam watched as the Ravager lifted a large piece of concrete and set it aside gently. What if the creature isn't a destroyer? What if it's a gatherer? Rex suddenly went rigid beside him, his head turned toward the creature below. The Ravager had stopped its searching and was looking directly at them. Even at a distance of several hundred meters, Sam could see the intelligence in those massive eyes. For a long moment, human and dog stood motionless while the galaxy's most feared monster simply watched them. There was no aggression in the creature's posture, just curiosity. It tilted its head slightly, the same gesture Rex made when trying to understand a new sound. Sam made his decision. He started walking down the slope toward the creature, Rex at his side. Behind them, his radio exploded with urgent voices from the Thunder Bay, but Sam reached over and turned the volume down. He needed to concentrate. The Ravager watched them approach, its massive head tracking their movement. When they were 50 meters away, the creature rose to its full height and took a step forward. Sam could feel the ground shake under his feet, but he didn't stop walking. 20 meters. The creature lowered its head, bringing those intelligent eyes closer to Sam's level. Its breathing was audible now, a deep rhythm that reminded Sam of wind moving through caves. Rex's tail began to wag slowly, reading the situation as curious rather than threatening. 10 meters. The Ravager opened its mouth slightly, revealing teeth the size of swords, but Sam recognized the gesture. It was the same mouth position Rex used when he was trying to catch a scent or taste the air for information. 5 meters. Sam stopped walking and looked up at the creature. This close, he could see details that the cameras had missed. The scales weren't uniform but varied in texture and color, and there were old scars along the creature's flanks that told stories of battles fought long ago. Its eyes weren't the cold reptilian orbs he had expected, but showed depth and complexity. The Ravager lowered its head until it was only 2 meters above Sam. He could feel the warm breath from its nostrils and smell the strange metallic scent of its skin. Rex stepped forward, completely unafraid, and sat in his formal attention posture. Sam took a deep breath and did something that no military strategist would have considered. He whistled. It was a simple pattern, 3 short notes followed by 2 long ones. The same whistle he used to recall Rex during search and rescue operations in the mountains. Clear, unmistakable, and carrying across the empty landscape with perfect clarity. The Ravager froze, its massive eyes widening with something that looked like surprise. The creature had expected many things from these strange visitors, but not this. Not communication. Sam whistled again, the same pattern but slightly louder. Rex responded immediately with a sharp bark, demonstrating the correct response to the signal. The Ravager's head swiveled between them, clearly making the connection between sound and response. For the third whistle, Sam changed the pattern slightly, making it a question rather than a command. Rex tilted his head, recognizing the variation, and gave a softer bark in response. The Ravager's mouth opened wider, and a sound emerged that Sam had never heard before. Not the deep infrasonic calling they had detected from space, but something higher in frequency, almost musical. The creature was trying to whistle back. The first attempt was crude, more of a rush of air than an actual whistle, but the intent was clear. The Ravager was trying to communicate using Sam's method, adapting its vocalizations to match the pattern it had heard. Sam smiled and whistled again, this time a simple ascending scale. The creature listened intently, then attempted to reproduce the sound. It was better this time, actually achieving something close to musical notes. Rex wagged his tail and barked approvingly. The sound seemed to encourage the Ravager, which made another attempt at whistling. This time the notes were clear and accurate, perfectly reproducing Sam's original signal. "That's it," Sam said softly. "You're getting it." The creature's posture had changed completely. The aggressive dominance display was gone, replaced by something much more like curiosity and excitement. It lowered itself to a resting position, bringing its head down to almost ground level so it could observe Sam and Rex more closely. Sam sat down cross-legged on the ground, putting himself at a non-threatening level. Rex moved to sit beside him, demonstrating calm pack behavior. The Ravager watched this with obvious interest, then lowered its own head to rest on the ground, mimicking their posture. For the first time since the crisis began, the galaxy's most feared monster was lying down voluntarily in the presence of other creatures. Sam reached into his pack and pulled out a small device, a simple whistle, that would let him produce more complex sounds. He played a short melody, something peaceful and non-threatening. The Ravager listened with complete attention, then attempted to reproduce the melody using its own vocalizations. The sound that emerged was unlike anything Sam had ever heard. Deep and resonant but unmistakably musical, it echoed across the empty landscape like a song of greeting. Rex responded with a howl, adding his voice to the strange harmony. And somewhere in that moment, surrounded by the ruins of a destroyed colony, 3 very different creatures began to understand each other. "Thunder Bay," Sam said into his radio, his voice filled with wonder. "Cancel the alert status. We're not dealing with a monster. We're dealing with a very large, very lonely individual who just wanted someone to talk to." The Ravager whistled again, and this time the sound was unmistakably happy. The golden light of sunset painted the ruins in warm colors as Sam sat beside the massive creature that had terrorized the galaxy. 3 hours had passed since their first exchange of whistles, and what had begun as simple communication had evolved into something extraordinary. The Ravager had a name for itself, though it took Sam time to understand the concept. Through a combination of whistles, body language, and patient repetition, the creature had communicated something that translated roughly to seeker. It wasn't born with this name but had chosen it during the long, lonely years of its existence. Rex had been the breakthrough in building trust. The dog's calm acceptance of the massive creature had demonstrated that these strange visitors meant no harm. When Rex had walked directly up to Seeker and sniffed at one of its enormous claws, the gesture had communicated more than hours of careful diplomacy could have achieved. Now Rex was playing. Actually playing with a 30-meter monster, chasing around Seeker's tail when the creature moved it in slow, careful patterns across the ground. The sight would have been impossible to believe if Sam hadn't been watching it happen. "Tell me about yourself," Sam said, using the whistle patterns they had developed. It was crude communication, more like speaking with gestures than real language, but it worked. Seeker's response came in a series of low rumbles combined with precise movements of its head and claws. Sam was beginning to understand that the creature thought in concepts rather than words, and its ideas were vast and complex. The story that emerged was heartbreaking. Seeker had been created by the Dominion scientists as the ultimate weapon, grown in laboratories and trained from birth to destroy their enemies. But the engineers had made a crucial error. In their attempt to create the perfect predator, they had given it intelligence far beyond what they intended. Seeker understood what it was supposed to do, but it also understood the consequences of its actions. Every world it destroyed filled it with confusion and guilt. The creature was intelligent enough to recognize that the beings it killed were like itself, thinking and feeling creatures with their own lives and purposes. "But you kept doing it," Sam whistled. Trying to understand, Seeker's response was complex, involving concepts of loyalty, programming, and something that Sam interpreted as desperate hope. The creature had continued its mission because it believed that somewhere, eventually, it would find others like itself. The Dominion had promised that successful completion of its tasks would lead to companionship, to an end to the terrible loneliness. But with each victory, Seeker had found only empty worlds and continued isolation. The communication became easier as the hours passed. Sam discovered that Seeker was incredibly intelligent, capable of understanding complex ideas and even abstract concepts. The creature had learned the languages of every species it had encountered, not to communicate but simply to understand what its victims were saying about their fear and desperation. "The people you collected," Sam whistled. "Where are they?" This question produced a reaction Sam hadn't expected. Seeker became agitated, its massive head turning toward a section of ruins that had been carefully cleared and organized. The creature moved in that direction, gesturing for Sam and Rex to follow. Behind what had once been the main administrative building, Seeker had created something remarkable. Using its incredible strength and surprising delicacy, it had constructed a series of underground chambers by carefully moving massive pieces of debris and stone. The entrances were sealed but not damaged, suggesting they could be opened again. "Shelters," Sam realized. "You built shelters." Seeker's rumbling response was filled with what Sam interpreted as pride and hope. The creature had not been destroying the populations of the worlds it visited. It had been collecting them, preserving them in carefully constructed safe spaces while it searched for a way to understand what it was supposed to do with them. Sam activated his radio with trembling hands. "Thunder Bay, I need you to send down deep ground scanning equipment immediately. And medical teams. Lots of medical teams." "What did you find, Ranger?" came Captain Rivers's voice. "Survivors. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, in underground chambers across this planet. The creature didn't kill them. It saved them." The revelation changed everything. While the Thunder Bay's crew worked to locate and access the hidden chambers, Sam continued his conversation with Seeker. The creature's emotional state was complex, a mixture of hope and terror. It had preserved all these people because it believed they might hold the key to ending its loneliness, but it had no idea how to actually communicate with them. Every species Seeker had encountered had reacted with fear and violence. The creature's size made it impossible to approach without causing panic, and its appearance triggered instinctive terror responses in most beings. Only Sam and Rex had treated it as something other than a monster. "You need to make yourself smaller," Sam suggested through whistles and gestures. Seeker's response indicated confusion. The concept of deliberately reducing its apparent size was foreign to a creature that had been designed to dominate through physical presence. Sam demonstrated by crouching down, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. Rex joined in by lying down and rolling over, displaying his belly in the ultimate gesture of submission and trust. Understanding began to dawn in Seeker's massive eyes. The creature slowly lowered itself to the ground, then continued sinking down until it was lying flat with its head resting on its front claws. In this position, while still enormous, it looked less like a predator and more like a very large animal at rest. The first rescue teams arrived as the sun was setting. Sam watched through Seeker's eyes as the small shuttles landed near the hidden chambers. The creature was nervous, its muscles tense with the effort of remaining still while strangers worked around it. "Stay calm," Sam whistled. "They're here to help." The moment when the first chamber was opened would be burned into Sam's memory forever. Aquarian families emerged, blinking into the artificial lights, alive and mostly unharmed after months of captivity. They had survived on supplies that Seeker had carefully gathered from across the planet, living in spaces that the creature had engineered to provide safety and basic comfort. The refugees' reactions to seeing their captor lying peacefully nearby were varied. Some screamed and ran. Others stood in shocked silence. But a few, perhaps understanding that something had changed, simply stared in wonder at the sight of the galaxy's most feared monster lying still, while a human and a dog sat casually beside its massive head. Dr. Webb's voice came through Sam's radio. "Ranger, we're reading elevated stress indicators from the creature. Heart rate is increasing rapidly." Sam looked at Seeker and saw the problem immediately. The creature was being overwhelmed by the proximity of so many other beings. After years of isolation, the sudden presence of hundreds of thinking, feeling individuals was creating emotional overload. "Everyone needs to move back," Sam said into his radio. "Give it space." Too much too fast, but it was too late. Seeker suddenly surged to its feet, its massive form towering over the rescue scene. Several refugees screamed and ran for cover. The creature's head swung back and forth, searching for threats that existed only in its own confusion and fear. Rex reacted instantly. The dog positioned himself between Seeker and the fleeing refugees, then sat and barked once sharply. It was the command bark he used during search and rescue operations when Sam needed to focus on him immediately. Seeker's head snapped toward the sound, and Sam saw recognition in those massive eyes. The creature remembered the communication they had established, the trust that had been built. Sam stood up slowly and whistled the calm-down signal he used with Rex during stressful situations. A long descending note that meant safety and peace. Seeker listened, its agitation beginning to subside. "Easy," Sam said, speaking both to the creature and into his radio. "Everyone stay calm. No sudden movements. Gradually, order was restored." The rescue teams continued their work while maintaining a respectful distance from Seeker. The creature remained alert but calm, watching the proceedings with obvious interest and hope. As more chambers were opened and more survivors were brought to safety, something remarkable happened. A few of the refugees, particularly the children, began to understand what they were witnessing. This was not a monster guarding its prisoners, but a confused and lonely being that had tried to protect them in the only way it knew how. An Aquarian child broke away from her parents and walked toward Seeker. The creature froze, terrified of causing harm through accident or misunderstanding. The child stopped just out of reach and did something that broke Sam's heart with its simple courage. She whistled. A clear, sweet note that echoed across the ruins. Seeker's response was immediate and gentle, a soft rumble that managed to approximate a whistle in return. The child smiled and clapped her hands together, delighted with the exchange. And in that moment, Sam knew that everything had changed. The galaxy's greatest monster had just learned that it could be something else entirely. It could be a friend. The Dominion fleet arrived with the arrogance of conquerors expecting to find another dead world. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Kepler-7 system grow larger on the view screen. According to the schedule, the Ravager should have completed its work here weeks ago, leaving nothing but empty planets ready for Dominion colonization. Instead, his sensors showed something impossible. Ships from a dozen different species were gathered around the mining world, and energy readings suggested massive construction and rescue operations were underway. Communications. Contact the Ravager immediately, Corvin ordered. Find out why this system hasn't been cleared. The response came not from the creature but from a human vessel. A simple message that made no sense. The Ravager is currently occupied with rehabilitation training. Please maintain a safe distance and prepare to receive diplomatic representatives. Corvin stared at the message for a full minute before speaking. Rehabilitation training? On the planet's surface, Sam was teaching Seeker to play fetch. It had taken 3 weeks to work up to this moment, but the massive creature was finally beginning to understand games and recreational activities. The object was a piece of mining equipment that weighed several tons, and when Seeker brought it back to Sam, the ground shook with each footstep. Good boy, Sam said, using the same tone he used with Rex. Seeker rumbled with pleasure at the praise, carefully setting down the massive object without damaging anything nearby. Rex barked approvingly from his position on top of a ruined building, where he served as a lookout for the training sessions. The dog had appointed himself as Seeker's companion and teacher, demonstrating proper behavior through example and encouragement. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. In 3 weeks, Seeker had gone from a confused and isolated destroyer to something approaching a well-socialized member of galactic society. The creature learned quickly and was eager to please, like an enormous puppy that had finally found a pack to belong to. The refugee camps had been replaced by permanent settlements, as beings from across the galaxy came to witness the miracle on Kepler-7. Scientists, diplomats, journalists, and simple curious citizens arrived daily to see the monster that had learned to be gentle. Dr. Webb approached Sam's position, carrying her ever-present tablet of behavioral notes. The Dominion fleet just entered the outer system. 12 ships, all heavily armed. Sam looked up at Seeker, who was waiting patiently for the next round of their game. What do you think, big guy? Ready to meet your old employers? Seeker's response was a complex mixture of sounds and postures that Sam had learned to interpret as nervous, but determined. The creature understood what was coming and was afraid, but it was no longer alone. 2 hours later, Admiral Corvin's shuttle touched down in the central plaza, where this entire story had begun. He emerged with a full honor guard, expecting to find explanations for the failure of the Dominion's ultimate weapon. Instead, he found a human park ranger sitting peacefully beside the most feared creature in the galaxy, while a German shepherd dog napped in the afternoon sunshine. Admiral Corvin, Sam said, standing up and brushing dust from his ranger uniform. I'm Sam Walsh, this is Rex, and this is Seeker. I believe you know each other. Corvin stared up at the Ravager, which was lying in a relaxed position but watching the newcomers with alert intelligence. What have you done to our weapon? We gave it a choice, Sam replied simply. Turns out your weapon is actually a very intelligent individual who was desperately lonely and confused about its purpose in life. Seeker slowly raised its head and made a soft sound, something between a whistle and a rumble. The sound carried no threat, but Corvin and his guard stepped backward instinctively. It's trying to say hello, Sam explained. Seeker has been learning to communicate properly instead of just intimidating everyone it meets. This is impossible, Corvin said. The creature is genetically programmed for obedience and destruction. It cannot simply choose to disobey its fundamental nature. Sam smiled. Admiral, you obviously don't know much about intelligent beings. Free will isn't something you can program out of a creature, especially one as smart as Seeker. You just convinced it that it had no other options. Rex opened his eyes and studied the Dominion soldiers with professional interest. The dog's calm demeanor was having its usual effect, making it difficult for the visitors to maintain their aggressive posture when faced with such obvious peace. Return our property immediately, Corvin demanded. The Ravager will resume its mission, or there will be consequences. Seeker's response to this was unmistakable. The creature rose to its full height, not in aggression but in a clear display of refusal. When it spoke, the sound was a perfect reproduction of the word no in Corvin's own language. The Dominion soldiers raised their weapons, but Sam held up a hand. I wouldn't do that if I were you. You're not just threatening Seeker anymore. You're threatening someone who has friends. As if summoned by his words, ships began appearing in the sky overhead. Aquarian vessels, Christek cruisers, Thornback fighters, and a dozen human ships. The entire rescue and research fleet that had been working on Kepler-7 had moved into protective positions. But more importantly, Seeker was no longer alone on the ground. Across the plaza, Beings from every species in the galaxy stood in quiet solidarity. The refugees that the creature had protected, the scientists who had studied its remarkable intelligence, the children who had learned to play games with the gentlest monster in the universe. Seeker has been granted citizenship in the galactic community, Sam announced. It has committed no crimes under current law, since it was acting under orders it believed to be legitimate. It has also demonstrated remarkable rehabilitation and poses no threat to anyone. Corvin looked around at the assembled crowd, calculating odds and political consequences. The Dominion was powerful, but they could not fight the entire galaxy at once. This is not over, he said finally. Yes, it is, came a new voice. Elder Moss materialized in the plaza as his holographic projector activated. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to offer Seeker-protected status and full citizenship rights. Any attempt to reclaim or harm the individual will be considered an act of war against all member species. Corvin's face went through several interesting color changes before he turned back toward his shuttle. The Dominion does not recognize the authority of the Council in this matter. The Dominion can recognize whatever it wants, Sam called after him. But Seeker has made its choice. It's staying with us. As the Dominion shuttle lifted off, Sam sat back down beside Seeker. The creature lowered its massive head and made a soft sound of contentment. So what happens now? Dr. Webb asked. Sam looked around at the growing settlement, where beings from across the galaxy were working together to build something new. Now we help Seeker learn to be whatever it wants to be. Rex yawned and settled back into his nap, completely unconcerned with galactic politics. The job was done, the pack was safe, and the afternoon sun was warm and comfortable. 6 months later, the Kepler-7 research station had become one of the most popular destinations in the galaxy. Visitors came from everywhere to see the rehabilitation center, where the universe's most feared monster had learned to be a productive member of society. Seeker had found its true calling as a construction worker. The creature's incredible strength and surprising delicacy made it perfect for large-scale building projects, and it took obvious pride in creating things instead of destroying them. The centerpiece of the station was the memorial garden that Seeker had built to honor the victims of its former missions. Each destroyed world was represented by a careful arrangement of stones and plants, a promise that the past would not be forgotten even as the future held new hope. Sam still worked as Seeker's primary handler and translator, though that relationship had evolved into something more like friendship between equals. Rex had officially retired from search and rescue work and now served as the station's unofficial ambassador, greeting visitors with the same calm confidence that had first convinced a monster to trust. The most popular attraction was the daily demonstration where Sam would whistle and Seeker would respond with increasingly complex musical performances. The creature had developed a talent for harmony and could now carry on entire conversations through melody alone. But the real miracle happened every evening when the work was done and the visitors had gone home. Seeker would settle down in the plaza while children from a dozen different species played games around its massive form. The creature that had once terrorized the galaxy now served as a jungle gym and storyteller, teaching young beings about the importance of understanding and forgiveness. And sometimes, when the mood was right and the sunset painted everything in golden light, 3 unlikely friends would sit together in comfortable silence. A human park ranger, a retired military dog, and a reformed monster, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky while the sounds of a thriving community filled the air around them. Sam would whistle softly, Rex would wag his tail, and Seeker would rumble with the deep contentment of a creature that had finally found its place in the universe. The galaxy's greatest monster had become its most beloved citizen, proof that sometimes the simplest solutions are also the most powerful. In the end, all it had taken was someone willing to whistle instead of shoot, and a dog wise enough to show that friendship was possible between any 2 beings who chose to trust each other.